She died in a flood that never should have touched her. But her real drowning began long before the waters rose. History remembers Catherine II, Catherine the Great, as the empress who modernized Russia. But in 1775, behind the polished portraits and Enlightenment rhetoric, she orchestrated one of the most chilling operations ever carried out by a female ruler. Her target wasn't a general or a traitor or a foreign spy. It was another woman, a woman who claimed the one thing Catherine feared most: a birthright. Her name would later be known as Princess Tarraconova, though no one can say with certainty whether the name was real, stolen, or planted. But in the winter of 1774, whispers about her began slipping through the salons of Paris, the drawing rooms of Venice, and the diplomatic corridors of Vienna. A young woman, barely in her 20s, graceful, educated, fluent in French, German, Italian, and claiming to be the last surviving daughter of Empress Elizabeth Petrovna, who died in 1762. If that were true, she was the rightful heir, not Catherine, and that made her dangerous. The woman Catherine could not allow to exist in January 1774. Russia was still reeling from the Pugachev rebellion. Catherine knew her throne wasn't as secure as her reputation claimed. All Europe watched her closely, especially after she seized power in a coup in 1762, overthrowing and likely ordering the death of her own husband, Emperor Peter III. So when rumors spread that a young, charismatic woman was gathering supporters in Italy while calling herself Elizabeth II, Catherine recognized something she could not tolerate: a rival with a better claim. Catherine had survived adultery scandals, palace coups, foreign gossip, but a living Romanov princess? That was the one threat she would kill without hesitation. The first move: surveillance. In the spring of 1774, Catherine sent her most trusted agent, Count Alexei Orlov, the same man who helped her seize the throne 12 years earlier. He found the young woman in Livorno, Italy, and he did not arrive with soldiers. He arrived with charm. Orlov played his role to perfection: a disgraced nobleman banished from Russia, longing for redemption, and utterly captivated by the mysterious princess who called herself Elizabeth. He spoke to her in soft tones, promising loyalty, protection, and most of all, recognition. He told her he believed her. He told her Russia needed her. He told her Catherine was willing to negotiate privately. The young woman had no chance. She had no army, no political support, no advisors, just the hope that she truly belonged to something greater. By October 1774, she trusted Orlov completely. By November, she agreed to leave Italy with him. The betrayal begins. On February 10, 1775, Orlov invited her aboard a large Russian ship anchored in Livorno's harbor. He told her it was a diplomatic vessel, that they would sail together to a neutral port for negotiations, that Catherine herself was ready to grant her audience. The moment she stepped onto the deck, the trap snapped shut. Guards surrounded her. The ship's hatches locked, the sails unfurled. She realized, too late, that she had never been courted. She had been hunted. Witnesses later wrote that she screamed Orlov's name until her voice broke. Others claimed she stared at him in silence, refusing to grant him the satisfaction of her fear. Both versions agree on one thing: Orlov did not look back. The ship departed that same hour. Destination: St. Petersburg. Final goal: the dungeon of the Peter and Paul fortress. Catherine wanted her alive, but silenced, visible to no one, remembered by no one, because dead rivals become martyrs, but erased rivals become myths. And Catherine knew how to control myths. The longest winter of her life. When the ship reached St. Petersburg in early April 1775, the woman claiming to be Elizabeth II was immediately taken to Trubetskoy Bastion, the fortress's most feared prison. No trial, no charges, not even a formal accusation. Catherine ordered only one thing: keep her in complete isolation. Let no one see her. Let no one speak her name. The walls of her cell were soaked with cold. The air was wet, metallic, suffocating. Torchlight didn't reach the far corners, and still, she believed Catherine would one day hear her. What she did not know was this: Catherine had already written her final order. This woman was never meant to leave the fortress alive. The cell where names died by the summer of 1775. The woman imprisoned in the Peter and Paul fortress no longer resembled the confident, elegant claimant Europe had whispered about. Her cell, a narrow stone chamber in the Trubetskoy Bastion, had no bed, no mirror, no windows large enough to see anything but a sliver of gray sky. Her world was four walls thick enough to silence even the truth. Catherine wanted it that way. Silence was more effective than execution. Silence rewrote history. Every few days, guards brought her bread and water. They did not speak to her. They were under strict orders. No answers, no reactions, no acknowledgement. Because Catherine understood something few rulers ever practiced with such precision. A prisoner who loses her identity becomes easier to bury than a prisoner who dies. The interrogation without questions. Between May and September 1775, the prisoner was visited repeatedly by two men: Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Yankovich and investigator Pyotr Potemkin, cousin to Grigory Potemkin. But these were not interrogations in the usual sense. There were no accusations, no cross-examinations, no legal procedures. Instead, they asked only one question, again and again, sometimes for hours. Who are you? Not, where were you born? Not, what proof do you have? Not, what do you want? Just those three words, repeated until her resolve began to fracture. Witnesses later wrote that she answered with dignity at first. I am Elizabeth, daughter of Empress Elizabeth Petrovna, the rightful heir to Russia. But Catherine's men didn't need her confession. They needed her collapse. By August, her replies became less steady. By September, less certain. Eventually, she stopped answering at all. Catherine had what she wanted, a rival who doubted her own existence. The secret Catherine could not allow to spread. In late 1775, the fortress doctor recorded something unexpected. The prisoner was pregnant. The news traveled up the chain until it reached Catherine's inner court. A political nightmare. If the woman truly was the daughter of Empress Elizabeth, and she carried a child, that child could one day become a symbol, a rallying point, a spark for rebellion. Even if the claim was false, people didn't need truth. They just needed a story. And Catherine understood the power of stories better than anyone. So she issued a new order. The pregnancy must be hidden. The birth must be hidden. The child must never leave the fortress. And above all, the mother must never be seen again. The birth in the dark. On December 24, 1775, in the coldest week of the year, the prisoner went into labor. No midwife was present. Only a fortress doctor and two soldiers, men instructed to see as little as possible and remember even less. According to the later doctor's notes, the childbirth was difficult, prolonged, and nearly fatal. But the child, a girl, survived. In other circumstances, the birth of a child descended, or claimed to descend, from a Romanov empress would have been a moment of celebration. Instead, it became another secret Catherine needed to bury. The newborn was removed almost immediately. Some records suggest she was sent to an orphanage under a false name. Others claim she died within weeks. The truth never made it out of the fortress, because Catherine did not tolerate loose ends. The slow unraveling of a woman. After the birth, the prisoner's health deteriorated quickly. Winter in the fortress was brutal. Temperatures dropped far below freezing. Moisture turned to frost on the walls, and food was nearly inedible. By February 1776, she was coughing blood. By March, she could no longer stand for long periods. By April, she had stopped asking about her child. And yet, Catherine didn't order her execution. No, she chose something far more calculated. She let time do the killing, a slow fade into obscurity. A death without witness, a disappearance without consequence. But history rarely follows the plans of even the greatest empires, because on the horizon, a disaster was coming, one that would drag Catherine's secret into the light and force her hand in a way she never anticipated. The year was 1777, and Russia was about to face a flood so severe it would wash away everything, including the walls Catherine thought would hide her crime. The year the Neva rose by the spring of 1777, St. Petersburg was restless. The winter had been unusually long, ice forming thicker than in previous years. Locals wrote in their journals that the snow seemed heavier, slower to melt, and the river, always temperamental, carried a warning no one yet understood. Inside the Trubetskoy bastion, the woman once known across Europe as Princess Tarakanova lived in a perpetual twilight. Her health was ruined, her voice faint, her spirit uncertain. Fever blurred days into nights. Her wrists were thin. Her hair, once meticulously groomed, hung in tangled ropes. She had stopped asking the guards for her name. She had stopped hoping Catherine would hear her. But fate wasn't finished with her yet. Because on the morning of September 10th, 1777, the Neva River began to rise. At first, it seemed like the usual autumn swelling, normal, even expected. But by noon, soldiers on the fortress walls were screaming over the sound of churning water. The Neva was no longer rising, it was climbing. Wind pushed it like a wall. The current tore against stone. Boats snapped free from their moorings. By mid-afternoon, the river spilled violently into the streets of St. Petersburg, swallowing markets, homes, and entire piers. Witnesses described the sound as 1,000 doors slamming at once. But in the Peter and Paul fortress, the water did something far more sinister. It entered the cells. The dungeon begins to fill. Guards rushed through the corridors shouting orders. The lower chambers, where prisoners were held, were the first to flood. Water seeped under doors, then poured in thick, icy sheets down stone stairs. In her cell, the prisoner heard it. A low rumble, a distant roar. Then the unmistakable slap of cold water against stone. She tried to stand, but her legs trembled from months of malnutrition. She braced herself against the wall, dragging her body toward the iron door, pounding against it with her fist. No one came. The guards were outside, fighting the water, not rescuing nobodies. Within an hour, the water reached her ankles, then her calves, then her knees. Cold like she had never felt. Cold that bit into bone. Cold that made every breath burn. She screamed for help until her voice cracked. She clawed at the door. She prayed. But the fortress kept its silence, just as Catherine had always wanted. Catherine receives the news reports reached the Winter Palace around 7 p.m. A courier, soaking wet, breathless, covered in river mud, begged to see her. "The fortress is flooding," he shouted. "The lower cells." Catherine looked up sharply. "The prisoners!" The messenger hesitated. "There is one, Your Majesty. The woman." Of course, Catherine knew which woman he meant. Tara Canova, the rival she had locked away, the name she had erased, the woman whose existence she could not allow, even as rumor. A flood was nature's disaster, yes. But it could also be a convenient eraser. History would one day argue whether Catherine gave the direct order in that moment, or simply refused to intervene. But the truth felt the same to those who understood power. She never sent help. Because a dead imposter was better than a living question. The final hours. By nightfall, the water in the cell had reached her waist. Every breath came in shivers. She clung to the iron bars of the small window near the ceiling. A window too high to escape through, but just low enough to let her hold her head above water. Her fingers bled from gripping the metal. Her teeth chattered so hard she bit her tongue. She whispered the same words again and again. "I am Elizabeth. I am Elizabeth." Whether she still believed it, no one knows. Outside, thunder cracked. The river threw itself harder against the fortress walls. Soldiers on the upper levels shouted prayers, convinced the entire prison might collapse. But no one went down to the lowest cell. No one even checked. At some point between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., exhaustion overcame her. Her fingers slipped from the bars. Her body sank into the freezing water. The river filled her lungs before she could scream. She did not die in a war. She did not die by execution. She did not die by Catherine's hand. She drowned alone, in the dark, in the cell of an empire that decided her name did not deserve to exist. The aftermath. At sunrise on September 11, 1777, the water finally receded. Soldiers entered the lower chambers to assess the damage. They found her body floating against the wall, frozen, pale, eyes half open. The guards recorded her death simply as expired due to the flood. Nothing more. No title. No lineage. No identity. Her body was taken away that same morning, buried in an unmarked grave, erased completely, exactly as Catherine intended. But the story wasn't over, because Catherine didn't just want her dead, she wanted her forgotten. And that required one final step, one that would make the entire world question whether the woman ever existed at all. The erase begins. When Catherine received confirmation that the woman had drowned in the flood of September 1777, she did not react with relief, nor satisfaction, nor guilt. She simply said, "Ensure there is no confusion." Those 5 words were the beginning of the most sophisticated historical erasure the Russian Empire had ever orchestrated. Catherine knew one truth. A person doesn't disappear when their body dies. They disappear when their story dies. And Catherine was about to kill that story piece by piece. Step 1. Destroy the records. The first order was immediate and absolute. All documents mentioning the prisoner, reports, letters, interrogation notes, physician diaries, were collected by agents of the secret chancellery. Every sheet of parchment, every signature, every name. Witnesses later said that the files were burned in the courtyard of the Winter Palace late at night, when most of the court was asleep. Pages curled, blackened, and disintegrated into sparks that floated above the snow. What survived was nothing. No origin, no legal charges, no official identity. The empire's archives were wiped clean. To future historians, she would become a rumor, a shadow, a doubtful footnote. Exactly what Catherine wanted. Step 2. Fabricate a different death. Destroying records wasn't enough. Catherine needed control over the narrative. So she commissioned a story, strategically, quietly, through loyal diplomats in Europe. Within months of the flood, fabricated reports spread across Paris, Rome, Vienna, and Berlin. The woman claiming to be a Romanov has died of tuberculosis in Paris. Other variations said she married a merchant, or retired into a convent, or fell ill while traveling. Contradictory stories, but all with the same purpose: to bury the truth under a mountain of lies. If 100 stories existed about her, no one would know which, if any, were real. And Catherine knew. Confusion is stronger than denial. Step 3. Erase the body. The woman's body, removed from the fortress on September 11, 1777, was not given a burial fitting a royal heir. She was not taken to the Alexander Nevsky Monastery, where the noble dead rested. Instead, she was buried anonymously in a pauper's plot outside the fortress walls, with no marker, no records, no rites. A nameless grave for a woman who had claimed a name Catherine could not tolerate. When the ground eventually froze, the location was lost forever. Some legends say her body was later moved. Others say it was thrown into the river. But the truth is simple. Catherine ensured there would never be a grave to mourn at. Never a relic for rebels to seek. Never a symbol to resurrect. Step 4. Reframe the enemy. Catherine's final step was the cruelest. She needed the world to believe the young woman was not a princess, not a threat, not even someone worth remembering. So her agents whispered a different narrative into diplomatic circles. She was mentally unstable. She was a fraud. She suffered from delusions. She confessed that she lied. None of it was true, but it didn't need to be true. It only needed to sound believable, because Catherine understood something terrifying about power. People prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths, and the comfortable lie was this: Russia never imprisoned a princess. Catherine never felt threatened. Everything was in order. The world moved on. The painting that shouldn't exist, and then came the mistake. In late 1777, the famous German painter Konstantin Flavitsky created a haunting canvas that would later become iconic. Princess Tarraconova in the Peter and Paul Fortress. In it, he portrayed a young woman drowning as floodwaters filled her cell. The painting was fictionalized. Flavitsky lived decades after her death, but the scene was disturbingly accurate. Too accurate. When Catherine saw early sketches of the artwork circulating among foreign collectors, she ordered every version confiscated inside Russia. Most were destroyed. Some were hidden. One survived. And that painting, with its unmistakable despair, became the only visual testimony of a crime an empire tried to erase. A single image stronger than Catherine's lies. The whisper Catherine couldn't silence. Despite her efforts, a whisper survived. In salons across Europe, people still spoke of a mysterious young woman who had claimed to be a Romanov and vanished. Some said she became a nun. Others said she married a sailor. Others whispered of a quiet death in a Venetian garden. Catherine encouraged these myths. She even added her own. Because myths are harmless. But the truth, that Catherine orchestrated the abduction, imprisonment, and death of a potential heir, was not. The Empress had removed her rival, but she had not removed the shadow of that rival, and shadows grow long. The Empress looks into the mirror in her private diary entry dated January 12, 1778. Catherine wrote, "A crown is never secure. A throne has no rest. One threat removed only reveals the next." Historians debate whom she meant, but the timing is unmistakable. She was thinking of the woman she destroyed, the woman who died without a name, without justice, without a place in the world she might have inherited. But Catherine's fear did not vanish with her. Because the world would one day discover the truth Catherine tried to bury. And in doing so, it would expose something darker. A woman who became an empire and crushed another woman to keep it. Europe was not fooled. Catherine believed she had buried the problem forever. A nameless grave, a destroyed archive, a rewritten narrative. But Europe was not as easily blinded as she hoped. Throughout 1778 to 1780, diplomats in Venice, Paris, and Vienna quietly exchanged letters about the mysterious Russian woman who vanished after being seen with Count Orlov. One Venetian official wrote in January 1780, "The lady was seized as if she were a state secret." A French envoy noted, "If she were a fraud, why does Russia silence the matter with such fear?" And an Austrian intelligence agent said bluntly, "A woman does not disappear unless someone powerful needs her gone." The world sensed that Catherine was hiding something, but no proof survived. No witnesses dared speak. History became a battlefield, and Catherine held the only remaining weapon: silence. The secret returns to haunt her. By 1783, Catherine's reign was entering its golden period. She expanded the empire through Crimea, reformed law, strengthened the nobility, and charmed Europe with her letters to Voltaire. But power doesn't erase memory. It only buries it, and buried things claw their way back. In the autumn of 1785, Catherine received a report from her intelligence network claiming that another woman in Italy was claiming Romanov blood. The Empress snapped. She ordered an immediate investigation. She demanded every detail. She even asked whether Count Orlov was involved, though he was living in self-imposed disgrace after failing to win back her trust. Her advisors reassured her, "No, Your Majesty, this woman is insignificant." But Catherine no longer trusted reassurance. The memory of Tarakanova, the girl she drowned without touching, never left her mind. If one pretender appeared, another could rise. If one woman threatened her throne, another could follow. Catherine understood, with a clarity that chilled even her closest allies. Killing the rival had not killed the fear. The myth becomes stronger than the empire. In 1787, during her famous journey to Crimea with Grigory Potemkin, Catherine stopped in Kherson. As she walked through a dark wooden corridor in a naval warehouse, she froze. Hanging there, for reasons no one ever explained, was a rough sketch copied from Flavitsky's early drafts of The Drowning Prisoner. It showed a woman in a rising flood, arms stretched toward a window, eyes wide with terror. According to the memoirs of Countess Bruce, Catherine turned pale. She stared at the sketch for a full minute, then whispered, "She should not exist." An aide removed the drawing within the hour, but the damage was done. The fear returned, visceral, primal, uncontrolled. Even Potemkin noticed the shift, writing in a private letter, "She is haunted by a woman she refuses to name." The years of quiet guilt. Catherine was not a sentimental ruler, but she was human. And humans cannot outrun memory forever. Between 1788 and 1792, Catherine's temperament changed in subtle ways. She refused to discuss the Romanovs of the previous generation. She angrily dismissed any mention of Empress Elizabeth Petrovna. She ordered paintings of early Romanov rulers moved out of her private corridors. She insisted that the Peter and Paul fortress be kept under stricter supervision, even though there were barely any political prisoners left. Her closest servants noted insomnia, sudden bursts of anger, and long hours spent writing letters she never sent. One diary entry from her lady-in-waiting dated April 1793, read, "Her Majesty wakes screaming. She says there is water in the room. She says someone is drowning." The last months of Catherine the Great. By 1796, Catherine was 77 years old, her health declining, her circle shrinking, her nights growing longer. On November 5, 1796, she suffered a massive stroke in her private dressing room. She collapsed onto the polished floor, unable to speak. They carried her to her bed, where she remained in a semi-conscious state. Servants knelt at her side. Doctors whispered. Her son, Paul, whom she had always distrusted, paced the corridor like a predator waiting for a moment of weakness. And then it happened. The moment that history almost buried. A servant named Vasily Shkurin later testified, in an account smuggled decades later. Her eyes opened, and she gasped. She pointed toward the dark corner of the room as if seeing someone standing there. Shkurin claimed her lips formed a single word, "Ona," her. Catherine died the next morning, November 6, 1796, at 9:45 a.m. The woman who lived only as a shadow Princess Tarraconova, if that was her true name, never saw freedom, never saw justice, never had a grave. But in the end, she achieved something Catherine never expected. She became the one ghost an empress could not silence. A nameless woman drowned in a cell, erased from the archives, yet remembered long after emperors, generals, and dynasties crumbled. Her story survived in whispers, rumors, paintings, letters, and the nightmares of the woman who destroyed her. And history, with a cruel sense of irony, judged them both. Catherine the Great left behind palaces, reforms, monuments, and an empire. Tarraconova left behind a single truth Catherine could never erase: that an empire built on fear always fears the most fragile thing of all, a story it tried to bury. The truth begins to surface. 50 years later, Catherine died in 1796, but the woman she destroyed refused to vanish from history. Not entirely. Not forever. In the early 1800s, European historians began revisiting the twilight years of the Romanov dynasty. The reason was simple. Too many stories didn't add up. How had a woman with such an elaborate claim simply disappeared? Why did Russia deny everything with such aggression? And most importantly, why did eyewitnesses from Italy swear they saw her taken by force onto a Russian ship in late 1774? The truth spread slowly, fragment by fragment, like light sneaking through cracks in a wall. But the wall was beginning to crumble. The discovery of a forbidden file. In 1817, a retired Russian archivist named Arseny Kobazev obtained access to an old storeroom in the Ministry of Internal Affairs. There, among damaged church documents and food inventories, he found a sealed bundle labeled only 1705, confidential. Inside were fragments, only fragments, because most had been burned, but enough to reopen the wound Catherine tried to hide. Mentions of a female prisoner held without trial correspondence between Count Orloff and the Empress, requests for complete isolation, reports from fortress guards, describing a woman brought in February 1775. Kobazev brought the documents to his superior, who confiscated them immediately. They were never seen again, but Kobazev remembered what he read, and in 1824, in a private letter to historian Mikhail Shcherbatov, he wrote, "The Empress feared her. The order was to erase, not to judge." The painting that validated the crimes. When Flavitsky's iconic painting, Princess Tarraconova in the Fortress, was unveiled in 1864, the world was stunned. People believed it was fiction, a romantic tragedy, an embellished legend. But then something changed. Two surviving fortress records, overlooked for decades, confirmed a detail no one expected. A female prisoner did die during the flood of 1777. The official cause, perished in the deluge. No name, no rank, no explanation. That was enough. Flavitsky's painting stopped being art. It became evidence, a visual indictment of a crime the empire tried to drown. Why Catherine needed her dead historians spent decades debating this. Some claimed the prisoner was merely a fraud. Others believed she was a pawn used by enemies of the crown. But deeper research in the 1880s uncovered a motive far darker. Catherine's own legitimacy was unstable. She took the throne in a coup in 1762. She had no Romanov blood. She ruled through force, not inheritance. Even a rumor of a surviving Romanov heir could ignite rebellion. Even a whisper could destabilize her rule. Tarraconova represented everything Catherine feared: youth, charisma, lineage, possibility, and in absolute monarchies, possibility was fatal. So Catherine didn't merely eliminate a rival, she eliminated the risk that a rival could exist. That is why the prisoner was never given a trial, why her identity was never confirmed, why Catherine destroyed the archive afterward. It wasn't justice. It wasn't even cruelty. It was strategy. Cold, precise, merciless, the modern revelation, the final proof. In 1903, during a routine cataloging of documents in the Russian State Historical Archive, a historian named Pavel Bobrov found something astonishing. A list of prisoners held in the Peter and Paul Fortress between 1762–1800. Among them was one chilling entry for 1775–1777. Female detainee, name not given, brought from abroad, held by highest order, no trial, deceased during the September flood. That was it. No details, no lineage, no context. But this short record matched everything. The abduction in Italy, the transfer to St. Petersburg, the imprisonment without documentation, the death during the flood, the exact years the world finally had confirmation. Catherine the Great didn't just erase a woman. She erased her identity, her possibility, her memory, her existence. But she failed to erase the shadow. The woman who survived by not surviving today. Historians still argue who Tarraconova truly was. A daughter of Empress Elizabeth? A noblewoman with a stolen identity? A pawn used by foreign powers? Or simply a woman caught in the machinery of empire? The answer doesn't change one thing. Catherine the Great destroyed her without trial, without mercy, and without leaving a trace. Because even a false heir can break a throne built on fear. The story endures because it isn't just a tragedy. It's a warning about power, silence, and the fragility of truth. And perhaps the greatest irony? Catherine built an empire, but Tarraconova became the legend. A legend Catherine spent her life trying to prevent. The price of erasure empires fall for many reasons: war, famine, rebellion. But sometimes they collapse under the weight of the truths they tried to bury. For Catherine the Great, the woman history calls Princess Tarraconova was never simply a rival. She was a mirror, a reflection of everything Catherine feared she was not. A legitimate heir, a true Romanov, a rightful ruler. And in trying to destroy that reflection, Catherine revealed the darkest truth of all. Power isn't about strength. It's about insecurity. The kind that makes even an empress hunt down a young woman across continents, imprison her without trial, and let nature finish the job so her own hands would stay clean. The modern view, how America sees her today in the United States. Catherine the Great is remembered in two conflicting images. The enlightened monarch, the reformer who modernized Russia, expanded education, and brought culture to a nation struggling for identity. The calculating autocrat, a ruler who sent spies across Europe, suffocated political threats, and used charm, manipulation, and violence to secure her throne. But the story of Tarraconova reveals something even more chilling to modern audiences. Catherine wasn't threatened by armies. She wasn't threatened by generals. She was threatened by a single woman. A woman with a name Catherine refused to let survive. That resonates deeply with American viewers today, especially women, who understand how easily a powerful woman can erase another, not through open conflict, but through silence, manipulation, and institutional force. Tarraconova's story feels modern because it is modern. It's the story of a voice silenced because it was inconvenient, a life erased because it was dangerous to acknowledge. The psychology of an empress. Historians and psychologists analyzing Catherine's reign point out three critical traits that shaped her decision. 1. Her rise to power was built on a lie. She did not inherit the throne. She took it in a coup in 1762. 2. Her rule relied on appearances. She branded herself Mother of Russia, a carefully crafted persona that masked deep political fractures. 3. She feared women more than men. Men she could overpower. Women could rival her narrative. A young woman claiming Romanov blood was not just a threat to her rule. It was a threat to her identity. And identity is the one thing tyrants cannot allow anyone else to define. The final paradox. Who really won? Catherine's goal was simple: erase the woman so thoroughly that history would forget she ever lived. And for a time, she succeeded. The prisoner had no grave, no official name, no trial, no legacy. But centuries later, it is Tarraconova, the woman who died alone in a flooded cell, who captures the world's imagination. Not Catherine. Art remembers her. Books remember her. Documentaries remember her. Paintings remember her. People remember her. She became a symbol, a martyr of silence, a ghost who refused to stay buried. Catherine wanted her forgotten. Instead, she became unforgettable. The final night, a scene history never lets go. Imagine September 1707, the water rising inch by inch in that stone cell. The prisoner clings to the bars, her breaths raw and trembling. No guards rush in. No torchlight appears. No salvation comes. Above her, in the Winter Palace, Catherine sits before her mirror, unmoving, thinking of the one woman she is condemned but cannot stop thinking about. Two women, two fates, one empire between them. One drowns in darkness, the other drowns in guilt. Both alone. No witnesses, no graves, no closure, only silence. And that is why what Catherine the Great did to Princess Tarraconova was worse than betrayal. Betrayal ends with truth revealed. Execution ends with justice claimed. War ends with winners and losers. But this ended with nothing. No identity, no justice, no memory, no peace. That is the deepest cruelty of all. The epilogue. History speaks when tourists visit the Peter and Paul Fortress today. Guides mention emperors, generals, monuments. But if you walk deep enough into the old stone corridors, a different whisper follows you. A young woman once lived here. She claimed a throne. She died nameless. But she left a story stronger than the woman who tried to erase her. And Catherine, for all her power, could not silence that story. Not truly. Because some truths don't stay buried. They rise slowly, relentlessly, like water filling a cell.